What's going on, everybody? This is Emerald Knight Leon back with another deck analysis. Today's deck analysis is going to be a little longer because it's on D Reaper and the different variants you could run with it. Right now, I have a black version of D Reaper and a yellow version, and those are what we're going to talk about. Uh, D Reaper is an interesting archetype, and I've been seeing people already experimenting with adding stuff to BT9 to the D Reapers, and it's an interesting archetype. Definitely not something I really enjoy playing. I've play tested it, and oh boy, if you go to Digivoid Gaming, there is actually a mirror match between myself and him on D Reapers, and it's an interesting one. But going into the yellow variant of D Reapers, which I kind of took from his as well as my own, running four of Mother D Reaper. Mother D Reaper is a. I don't know how you would describe it. It's not a Digimon, it's an egg, but it can be brought out into the field. It can't attack, but it's not affected by any card effects from your opponent. So, for example, your opponent can't source strip any of your searchers that are under it. Speaking of searchers, if you don't have any other Mother D Reapers in play, you can place one of your ADR02 searchers that is either in play or from your hand under its Mother D Reaper as its Digivolution source. And this is a once per turn effect. And then during your turn, once per turn, when you would play a card with D Reaper in its trait from your hand, you can reduce the play cost by 1 for every Digivolution source under it. So the whole premise of D Reaper is you're building up the stack of searchers under it to hard play a lot of high cost stuff, and then you're going to go for an explosive finish while poking all the while. Moving on to really the bulk of the deck is your ADR2 Searcher. Now this variant of the yellow version, I run 20, mainly because I just want to see it often. It's the difference between, say, this variant that I run and, say, Digivoid Gaming's. His is that he runs the Pilates, which is a really useful card to basically just clear your opponent's board, but it is also heavily reliant on the amount of searchers you have in your under your Mother D Reaper. But Searcher, like Eosmon, you can have up to 50 copies of it in your deck. When you would play this card from your hand, you can reduce its cost by 2 if you don't have another Searcher in play. So if you already have one Searcher under your Mother D Reaper and you have no Searchers out in play, you can essentially play Searcher for free. It can't attack players, unfortunately, and which is kind of a bummer because it would be really useful for poking early on. But on the upside, when you hard play it, you do get to draw 1, and then it's inheritable. All of your Digimon with D Reaper in their traits gets plus 1000 DP. So our next D Reaper here is we're running 4 copies of the ADR 3 Pendulum Feat. Pendulum Feat has 3000 DP. It has the on-play effect of revealing top 3 cards of your deck. You can add 1 card with D Reaper in its trait and 1 ADR2 Searcher, and then place the remaining at the bottom. So really, the whole premise of this deck is searching for your searchers and then placing it under your Mother D Reaper, while also searching for some of your other key cards like Gatekeeper and Reaper. We have ADR4 Bubbles. Bubbles is a nice card because if it comes out as security, you can place one of your searchers that's either in play or from your hand under your Mother D Reaper, and then it has the same effect for its on play. So how you can go about that is you play ADR2 Searcher, you get the draw, you place one Searcher from your hand under Mother D Reaper through her effect, and then you play Bubbles in order to bump the Searcher that you just played on the field under your Mother D Reaper. So that's one way you can go about that. Or if you really wanted to and you had the memory, you could hard play both of them, place one under your Mother D Reaper, and then Bubbles' effect will place the other, and you'll get 2 draws. But it's really based on how much memory you're working with at the time. We'll also be running 4 copies of ADR1 Jerry. Jerry is a card that you have to have 4 copies of. You are suspending her every turn in order to reveal the top 5 cards of your deck, and then you place 1 searcher that's among them under your Mother D Reaper. You have to keep getting searchers under your Mother D Reaper. That's how the deck is supposed to function, really. So getting your Jerry out really early on in the game can be very useful. Finally, we got one of my favorites, Gatekeeper. Gatekeeper can be played from security without battling and without paying its memory cost. If you have a Mother D Reaper in play, when it's played, recover 1. During your opponent's turn, while you have a Mother D Reaper with 6 or more Digivolution cards in play, all of your opponent's Digimons gain security attack -1. So what I like to do with Gatekeeper is I'll have Gatekeeper come out of my security. It'll be my turn. I will swing with Gatekeeper. It survives because by that point, I might have like 6 or even 5 at the time. And then I go into my 6 on that same turn. And if I really wanted to, I could hard play another Gatekeeper and then use Tactical Retreat to bring my first Gatekeeper that I already swung with back into my security, which will just let me recover more and more. So that's very useful. Finally, we have 4 copies of Reaper. Reaper is your endgame. Basically, you need to have 7 searchers under your Mother D Reaper because you want to be able to play this card for 0. And at the same time, you want to have searchers in your trash. So how it's going to work is it has Rush, and then when you attack, you can place 2 ADR searchers from your trash under it in order to unsuspend. Ideally, you want to have maybe 13 searchers, 14 maybe, under your Mother D Reaper before going into Reaper. The reason you want that is because you want Reaper to still have all of that DP. Because if you have, say, 13 searchers under, you trash 7, you play Reaper for free now, you still have 6, which means plus 6,000 for all of your D Reapers, which will bring your Reaper to 21,000. So even if, say, you're going into the mirror match and you hit a Wyvern's Breath, or you hit a Spiral Masquerade, unless your opponent has the necessary Digimon to equal that many DP reductions on your Reaper, Reaper's going to survive. And with Reaper's effect, you'll still be able to unsuspend him by playing 2 more searchers under him. And then you'll do it again, and you're just going to keep stacking the DP onto him. At that point, the only real issue comes from if he gets bounced back to your hand or to your trash. In which case, if you really needed to, if you had 14 under and now you have 7, you can just use that 7 again and just repeat the cycle. Now going on to our option cards, we're running 2 copies of Tactical Retreat. Again, Tactical Retreat is really useful when used in conjunction with Gatekeeper. Even coming out of security, it's nice because of the recovery. We're also running 2 copies of Spiral Masquerade. Because you're playing a lot of D Reaper cards, you're gonna be having a lot of Digimon to use Spiral Masquerade with, since for every Digimon you have, you activate its effect. One of your opponent's Digimons gets minus 3,000 DP for the turn. And finally, 1 copy of Reinforcing Memory Boost. Reinforcing, I see the merit of it. If in some cases I say it would be great, in other cases I would say maybe bump it out and play more Spiral Masquerade. You know, I'm not sure. But moving on, we also have TK and Kari. Mainly TK and Kari's here because you want that 2+ memory, but you're still wanting to have a decent amount of security. The TK Kari is really useful when you're going into a mirror match or if you're going against a deck like Mastemon, where you're going for the explosive finish against Mastemon. So odds are you're going to have lower security than your opponent because they're constantly recovering. We'll also be running 2 copies of Kari. So Kari is the memory tamer here. Kari can actually work pretty well with Gatekeeper because when you get Gatekeeper or you hard play Gatekeeper, you'll recover and then you use Kari's suspend effect to gain a memory, so you can just play something else, maybe choke your opponent out. So that is the yellow variant of D-Reaper. I also have a black version right here. So the black variant of D-Reaper has some different stuff going for it. For one thing, we're only running 18 ADR searchers because we're running 2 of the Pilates heads. And as I mentioned, this card's effect is mainly used for dishing out and deleting your opponent's Digimon. Because he's used in conjunction with having your Mother D-Reaper have searchers under it to bump its own DP, that makes its effect work a lot more efficiently. Because you suspend him in order to delete an opponent's Digimon that's DP is less than or equal to its DP. So say if you had 6 searchers under it, Pilates head will have 9,000 DP, which means he can now delete anything 9,000 DP and below. Outside of that, we are running 3 copies of Breath of Gods. Breath of Gods is really here as the tech for Reaper, because that is the major issue with Reaper, is Reaper can be bounced, unfortunately. And this is going to remove one of his weaknesses of being bounced back to your hand or deck. The only other issue Reaper can go against now is being de-digivolved. That's the only other issue now. But this will mitigate some of that since you're primarily going against decks like Imperial Dramon. This is really good against the Imperial Dramon matchup, where Imperial Dramon, if they get the right hand, they can do a lot of damage. But if you're able to get this going fast enough, even if they get a decent hand, you can still have a shot at winning. You'll also be running 2 copies of Parabolic Junk. Parabolic Junk is used in conjunction with the Pilates heads because it's going to basically give one of your opponent's Digimon on deletion gain 2 memory. So, on one of your Digimon. So you're just going to bump it onto any of your Digimon. It could be Pilates heads if you don't want to have it out. You're just going to swing. You're going to just poke. Ideally, you're going to attach it to your Pendulum Feet or your Bubbles. Or even in some cases, if you wanted to, you could attach it to Reaper. So you could, if you had both Parabolic Junks, attach it to Reaper. If Reaper somehow dies in security, or if it somehow gets deleted by a card effect, you're able to then essentially just gain 4 memory right off the bat. If you have enough searchers under, you can now play another, play anything else in order to just start setting up again for the next major wave of hits for your opponent. As for our Tamers, we're running 2 copies of Izzy. Izzy is mainly here as a memory setter, but also to predict the future. With Izzy, we are going to be looking at the top 3 cards of our deck. We're going to set up those 3 cards in a way where we'll get the most bang for a buck. For example, if we had Jerry out and we played Izzy, we look at the top 3 cards of our deck. Say, for example, we'll have 2 searchers. We put 1 searcher on the top and then 1 searcher on the bottom of those 3 cards. That means on our turn, we will draw the first searcher, put it under Mother D-Reaper, use Jerry's effect, reveal the second searcher among them, play that under Mother D-Reaper, and so on and so forth. And then finally, Izzy and Joe. Izzy and Joe is a great card just in general because majority of the time your opponent's just going to have a lot of bodies on the board. So you're just almost guaranteed to get the memory. But outside of this black variant, there are a few other cards that we could tech in. We've talked about the Pilates head, but there's also the creep hands, which can function as a blocker in the event that you wanted to, say, run something like, I don't know, Breath of Gods onto that. So you're going to just give it reboot, so it'll just swing into security, reboot. You can block next turn. We also have Horn Striker, which will gain Rush, so you can just hard play that swing. Maybe, set that up with something in order to, kill it off, or just to have an extra, another way to play multiple Horn Strikers, maybe. If you're setting yourself up with a lot of DP, like the Izzy and Joes, you can hard play a Horn Striker using Mother D Reaper's effect, and then hard play the second one if you somehow are at 7 memory. So you're going to have 2 swings right then. If you have enough searchers, you can then bump those down into the Reaper and just start swinging for game at that point. We've talked about Breath of Gods and Parabolic Junk. Ultimate Flare is another card that can be very useful in the D Reaper deck, especially if you're going against, say, Jogress or Mastemon, where Mastemon is not good. It's not good. Or if you're going against anything that has on deletion effects, that's not good if they're deleted. De-digivolving it will just kind of mitigate that. And if it gets sent up to its into a Digimon with a play cost of 3, it's dead. What more needs to be said? There are some red tech that I've been thinking about. Using the starter deck Tai Kamiya, all of your Digimon are going to get plus 1000 DP, so that'll include all of your D Reapers, just making them hit a little harder. You can then tech in a Delicate Plan for your Reaper, so that Reaper won't activate any of the option cards. So at that point, Reaper is just going to go in really hard, really fast. Otherwise, Offensive Plugin A can be a useful card because you're just going to get that extra security check, and it can be played no matter what Tamer you have out, regardless of color. And if you're looking for more searchers in a pinch, Fireball, or Pyrosphere as I call it, can get you that draw too. Outside of that, if you're running the creep hands, I would say the starter deck 5 Tai Kamiya might be useful, because you're just going to use blocker to suspend one of your Digimon, and creep hands is going to survive. And then you're going to suspend Tai Kamiya in order to unsuspend creep hands so it can block again. So that's just another thing. So again, that is it for these two. Honestly, as much as I enjoy D Reaper, I don't like how slow it can be, especially in certain matchups like the mirror match or against Mastemon or Yellow Hybrid of all things. It can get really slow, and if you don't have the focus for it, you're bound to just trip up on a few things here and there, and that can snowball into a really bad time. But I hope you enjoyed this. I'm going to be uploading a lot of videos in the next few days, mainly to try to just get through the rest of the EX2 decks that I've been tinkering around with before the pre-releases for BT9 starts, because I do have deck analyses planned for BT9, and definitely I want to go over a lot of those. So expect a number of videos within the next 3 to 4 days, and I will see you in the next deck analysis. Peace.